Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Hey, what's up? You guys are listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Foreman, and this is actually my first episode with GSMC, so I want to start by giving you guys a short introduction about myself. Okay, so I'm a college student pursuing a bachelor's degree in mass communications. After that, I plan on pursuing a career in sports broadcasting. Basketball is my favorite sport, and I believe the NBA is the best league in sports. So I'm super excited and super thankful for the opportunity. But as far as today's episode goes, I'm going to be talking about ESPN's list of who has the best odds to win the NBA championship, my own personal playoff prediction. Then I'll be discussing the Warriors and their offseason and how I think they should go about it. And then make sure you stick around to the very end of the show because I'll be breaking down my top 10 current NBA players, and you guys don't want to miss that. But like I said, I want to start with ESPN and their list with who has the best odds to win the NBA championship, to win the finals this year. And I don't think they're too far off. So let me tell you their odds as of this week, okay, or last week. So the Lakers, according to ESPN and their panel of sports analysts or basketball analysts, the Lakers have a 50% chance of winning the NBA Finals. The Bucks have a 26.5% chance, and the Clippers are there with a 23.5% chance. I don't love these percentages, mainly because, they contrast their last numbers. ESPN put out so much. That's my biggest conflict. The biggest thing I don't like about those numbers. Again, they put the Lakers at a 50% chance, the Bucks at 26, and the Clippers at 23. But listen to this. Back in March, they did the same thing with, I'm guessing, the exact same panel of voters or analysts, and the numbers didn't quite add up the same way. Okay, so the Milwaukee Bucks back in March were said to have a 60.5% chance of winning the championship. The Lakers were at 28 or about 29%, and then the Clippers were down at 10.5% to win the NBA Finals. 10.5. Now, I think this is when the Clippers were having some, team chemistry issues, implementing some new guys to their roster and their lineups and such. But to have the Clippers down at 10.5 and the Lakers at 29%, and the Bucks up at 60. And then this past week they come out and say, no, now the Lakers are up at 50%, the Bucks are down to 26, and the Clippers shot up to 23. Again, I don't love either of these numbers. I especially disagree with the numbers they put out in March. I think that was absurd to think that the Bucks had a 60% chance and the Clippers had a 10% chance. So I do have issues with those numbers. I think that those are off completely. But let's go all the way back to before the season started, okay? And this was after free agency, after the big Anthony Davis trade. So most of these teams are already set in stone, okay? Let's keep that in mind. But before the season started, this same panel of voters, I'm guessing it was released by ESPN as well. The Clippers were said to have a 54.5% chance to win the championship. The Bucks were at a 36.4%, so the Bucks have been pretty consistent throughout this entire thing. The 76ers were thrown in there at 6%. I believe the Jazz had a couple of percentage of a chance. That was when they traded for Mike Conley, and those analysts really blew that up and said how I agree with them at the time, but time is the ultimate teller, and it came and it is proven to us that Mike did not have the effect on that team that we were really hoping. He didn't click, and their chemistry is not as great as we were expecting. But at the beginning of the season, that shows the Jazz had a couple percentage points to win the title. But the Lakers had a 0% chance to win the finals at the beginning of the season. Okay, just take that in. Anthony Davis and LeBron James are on the same team. Okay, they're on the same team. The roster doesn't exactly look the same as it does now, but they have DeMarcus Cousins. They have Anthony Davis and LeBron James. This is before the season starts. And the same panel gave them a 0% chance to win the finals back before the season even started. And I just don't see how before the season starts we go from 0, and then now right before we get the playoffs going, getting started back up again, the Lakers shoot up to 50%, from 0 to 50%. Okay? And then from the beginning of the season to March, they shoot from 0 up to 28.9%. Okay, but again, people weren't ultimately sold on them. That was when they played the Bucks, they played the Clippers already, and they lost, I believe, all of those matchups. So people weren't quite as high as LeBron or on LeBron and the Lakers as they are now. Okay, so I understand that, but I just can't agree with these numbers. The fact that they're saying the Lakers have a 50% chance, I think they're blowing it way out of proportion. But let's break it down and kind of see if we can understand why, at least, they're saying these things. So let's break down the top 3 rosters, obviously the 3 teams that have been in contention talks all year: Lakers, Clippers, Bucks. Let's talk about those 3 teams and why those percentages look like they do. At least why those ESPN analysts put those numbers, made that 50% like they did. So let's start with the Los Angeles Lakers. First in the Western Conference right now. Not necessarily something people saw coming. 49-14 is their record. And what I want to do is go down the top 5 scorers, the top 5, which ultimately are the top 5 players. They kind of come out that way, but the top 5 players on each team, their scoring averages and stuff like that. Maybe that'll help us understand how they came to these numbers. But let's start with the Lakers. Number 1 on the list for the Lakers, Anthony Davis, averaging 26 points, 9 rebounds. He's got a block a game. In my opinion, he's the defensive player of the year this year. One of the best two-way players in the league, leading the Lakers in scoring this year. Obviously, at the beginning of the year, we saw LeBron say, the focal point is going to be AD. We're really going to try to get him involved, get him comfortable in this system, help him thrive. Obviously, that's worked. He's up to 26 and 9 a game. Very impressive. Very impressive. His co-star in LeBron, 25 points for LeBron, 10.7, almost 11 assists a game, and 8 rebounds a game. Okay, this is a guy saying, I'm going to tone it back scoring this year, still averaging 25 points a game. He moved to a point guard position this year. I know he's been a small forward or a point forward his whole career, but this year especially, he's committed to the point guard position. He's the best point guard in basketball this year, leading the league in assists in year 17. Obviously, him and AD are the two highlights of the Lakers roster. But then, we see a drop-off. We see a pretty big drop-off, actually, to 2 to 3 in scoring. So LeBron was at 25. Then we go to number 3 at Kyle Kuzma, who's averaging 12.5 points a game, about 4 rebounds. Okay, so yep, you have the two stars in the league, in LA. But then, as far as depth, they really start sacrificing. It really goes downhill after those two top players. So Kuzma's only averaging about 12 points. I think we can all agree he's had a pretty disappointing season. I think we all kind of expect him to be up in more in the 16 to 17 point range, because that's really what the Lakers need on a nightly basis. And they've kind of been getting that from a handful of guys, him included on some nights. But only averaging 12.5 points this year. A little bit of a letdown for Kyle after averaging, 18 last year. But yeah, quite a big drop-off from 2 to 3. Let's go to number 4 on the Lakers. Contavious Caldwell-Pope. He is averaging 9.5 points a game. So, again, from the 3 to 4, we're dropping off another 3 points. Their fourth leading scorer is at 9.5 points. Not terrible, but not really something you expect from, the number 1 seed in the Western Conference and the 50%, the team that has a 50% odds to win the championship. Their fourth and third scores are barely over the 10-point mark. But then at number 5, Avery Bradley and Danny Green. I don't want to leave either of those guys out. I think they contribute pretty much in the same way, 3-and-D type players, both averaging about 8 points, a couple of rebounds, maybe an assist or 2 a game. Clutch players, guys who can play both sides of the ball, but in no means, star players. But to have your fifth and sixth best players be Avery Bradley and Danny Green, that is not a bad deal. I would take that on my roster. My fifth or sixth best guys, Danny Green or Avery Bradley. So in no means are the Lakers, an underdog. I don't know how they got here. Like I said, they have the 2 stars in LeBron and AD. But it's no secret there's a drop-off after that. I don't necessarily see 50% odds to win the title off those 5 guys. But let's keep going. Next, I want to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. They had the number 1 seed in the NBA. Obviously, they're number 1 in the East or Eastern Conference. 53-12 is their record right now. Led by, obviously, the Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo, averaging about 30 points, 13 rebounds, and about 6 assists, okay? He's the ultimate one-man show in the NBA right now. Doesn't have a certified co-star, in my opinion, at least. I'll talk about Chris Middleton in a sec. But yeah, obviously, they have an MVP caliber player in Giannis, the reigning MVP. Could be a defensive player of the year, could be the defensive player of the year, depending on which way they want to take that with him or Anthony Davis. But we know what he brings to the court every single night. We know he's an MVP caliber player. We know what he brings to the table. But then let's see his co-star in Chris Middleton. In no way is it a LeBron Anthony Davis-like situation, where you have 2 of the top 10 players in the league on the same team. He has Chris Middleton. Yes, he has been an all-star the past 2 years. This year in specific, averaging about 21 points. But my opinion on him may be lesser or, lesser than other people's. I don't think he is good enough to be the second best player on a championship caliber team. Ultimately, that is kind of why I have some doubts in Milwaukee. I'll talk about that in my playoff predictions coming up next, but not a top 10 player, not 2 of the top 10, 2 of the top 15 players. A nice player in Chris Middleton to be the second leading guy in the Bucks, but in no way the caliber of a Anthony Davis, LeBron James duo or a Kawhi Leonard, Paul George duo. But yeah, Chris Middleton, definitely, he deserved to be an all-star at least once. 20-point average scorer. Definitely a nice guy to have to be your third or fourth guy on the roster. But for the Bucks, he's number 2. Number 3 for the Bucks would be Eric Bledsoe, averaging about 15 points, 5 assists. Obviously, we saw him as the underrated point guard in Phoenix until we saw Milwaukee grab him. We know what he can bring. Like I said, about 15 points, 5 assists. That is perfect. I would say that's a perfect estimation for Eric Bledsoe. If he would ask me what he would bring to the table, I'd say 15, 16 points. Hopefully, I hope he can score that much. And then 5, 6 assists. So definitely a starting point guard in the league, an above average starting point guard, a great defender, a great number 3 guy to have on your team. Like I said, definitely an established point guard in the league, great defender, great player to have, great tool for Milwaukee. So Eric Bledsoe is number 3. Number 4 for Milwaukee, Brook Lopez. So he's averaging about 11, 12 points a game. A center who can stretch the floor out to the three-point arc, more three-point shooting around Giannis, the better, which was obviously why they added Brook Lopez and Chris Middleton and, George Hill and Wesley Matthews, these shooters. But Brook Lopez, not an elite player, not an elite center, a good shooter, a really good shooter. He can stretch the paint. But as far as down low, not someone who can disrupt or get a whole bunch of rebounds. He's only averaging about 4 rebounds right now. I know he's playing with Giannis, who's grabbing 13, 14 a game. But as a center, averaging 4 rebounds a game, not an elite paint force, but a very good shooter, very good outside shooter. Number 5, George Hill. I could go either way for number 5 for the Bucks. I was debating George Hill, Wesley Matthews, but I went with George Hill. About 9 points, brings veteran leadership, but again, older point guard, out of his prime, simply bringing veteran leadership, about 10 points a game. But that's arguably the top 5 for the Bucks, who are right now the second leading favorite to win according to ESPN. But let's talk about the Clippers. 44-20 right now. Let's talk about these 5 players, which, in my opinion, just having these guys on your roster, these guys, some of them coming off the bench, let alone, they should be higher than 23%. I think, let's talk about it. First up, obviously, they have Kawhi Leonard, 27 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, almost 2 steals a game, the reigning finals MVP, the Claw. We know what he can do on both sides of the floor. We know what he brings. He goes to a team, they become a championship contender. We saw it last year. We see it this year. We know what Kawhi Leonard is. We know what he brings to the table. Number 2, Paul George. Okay, a little bit of an off season for him coming back from that injury. Hasn't played a whole bunch. That's kind of the biggest knock on the Clippers roster. Haven't played a whole bunch together. But Paul George averaging about 21, 5 rebounds. We know what he can bring when fully healthy. Last year he was in the MVP, top 3 in MVP voting. So we know what he can bring to the table. Maybe a little bit of an off year this year, but I expect him to be back better. But not better than ever, but as good as he's been in the playoffs with all the rest he's gotten. So Paul George at number 2. Number 3, coming off the bench, Lou Williams. Okay, so their 6th man is coming off the bench and giving them 18 points and 6 assists. 2-time, 3-time 6th man of the year, if not the best 6th man of the year of all time, Lou Williams. Another monster coming off the bench at number 4, Montrezl Harrell, also averaging 18 points off the bench, but then giving 7 rebounds after that. Okay, these are the 2 best bench players in the NBA, and the Clippers have both of them to add to their 2 stars that are starting, as well as their 5th guy in Marcus Morris, who was averaging close to 20 points in New York before he got traded to the Clippers. A 3-and-D guy, a gritty guy, a great guy to have defensively, and if you paid attention to those 5 guys, 4 of them are averaging 18 or more points a game. Okay, the only other team that's close is the Celtics. They have 3 guys averaging 20 plus. I think 4 or 5 averaging 18, 17 plus. But still, We know what the Clippers have. Like I said, 4 guys, 18-plus points a game. They have the most firepower in the NBA, and for the Lakers to be at 50% and for them to merely be at a 23%, I think is I don't think it adds up. Even just on paper. Okay, we can look at the records. The Lakers are only 7 games ahead. Again, or 7 games. They've lost 20. They've lost 14. About 6 games ahead. So in no way are they, 10, 15 games ahead, or 10 games ahead. Clearly the better team. The Clippers have won 2 out of the 3 matchups. So I don't get the 50% Lakers odds to win the championship. I don't get the Clippers being down at 23%. I don't think that makes sense just off paper. I'm really excited for the NBA postseason. I don't want to talk too much about it yet because I'm going to take a small break. And when I get back, I'm going to talk about the postseason as it is right now, 1 through 8 seedings on both sides. I'm just going to talk about how they are right now, and I'm going to give you guys my predictions as far as who's going to be the championship or the champion this year. So I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, guys, to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Like I said before the break, I want to start by talking about the NBA playoff prediction, or the NBA playoffs, and give you guys my personal prediction of what I think is going to happen when the playoffs start back up. So again, I want to say this is considering that the Grizzlies, whoever are in their seeds, stay in their respected seeds whenever after those 8 seeding games. So this is keeping the Grizzlies in the 8th seed, keeping the Magic in the 8th seed in the East, and keeping all the other seeds the exact same. So let's start with the first round out west. So the first round out west would be the Lakers versus the Grizzlies. I like the Grizzlies a lot. I'm really impressed with John Morant. I think he's the rookie of the year this year. I'm super impressed. He willed the Grizzlies, a team we all thought was rebuilding this year. I think they are still rebuilding, but I think that rebuilding timeline got moved up after seeing, John, what he can do on the court. Like I said, super impressed with that. However, a very young team. They basically will go as far as Ja will take them. And as far as matching up against the Lakers, they can't. They have no players, so they can send it LeBron, send it Anthony Davis. Like I said, a very young team. Very impressed they made it this far. But I see Lakers in 4. I see LeBron and AD playing through the third quarter, then being up big and sitting a lot of the fourth quarter. So I got the Lakers beating the Grizzlies in 4 games. I got Ja playing very well. I got him playing good in those first 8 seeding games, but still not enough to beat the King and AD. Lakers in 4. Up next, Utah Jazz against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Honestly, this really has to depend on Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert and their relationship. If it was tarnished by the whole coronavirus pandemic, obviously Rudy was most likely the one to give it to Donovan, and obviously Rudy was the first one in the NBA to get it, wasn't acting, the most responsible before, everything like that. So I think as far as the Utah Jazz go, it really depends on their two stars, their relationship, because in the NBA, team chemistry matters more than ever. You can't necessarily always play with somebody you don't get along with. Some of the greats can, it takes a big guy to do that, but not everybody can. And I think it really depends on how that relationship is and what that looks like. But the Jazz did lose Bogdanović, their three-point shooter. That came out that he was going to miss the remainder of the season. That's a big blow to them. He's a big part of their scoring, their three-point shooting, and spreading the floor. I see that hurting them with the unsolved possible relationship issues with Gobert and Mitchell. I really don't think this is the Jazz year. Maybe next year they can fix all this stuff up, add a couple of new pieces. They'll be healthier, have another year to work with Mike Conley. But I like the Oklahoma City Thunder in this season. I have them winning, or in this series. I have them winning in about 6. Maybe it goes 7, depends, but I have them winning ultimately. I have Chris Paul, his leadership, being the biggest factor, leading that young group of guys. And they got some scorers on that OKC team. They got Schroeder, they got Gallinari, Chris Paul, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They got some ballers. They're young, they can run. And I think they'll get the win against Utah, get a little bit of payback against Utah in the first round. Yeah, I like Oklahoma City Thunder. Next up would be Denver versus Houston. So the Nuggets against the Rockets. A big post-centric team in the Nuggets since their best player is a center. We do see him kind of run the ball movement. He doesn't just sit down low. He can spread the floor and shoot. However, Denver is one of those teams that really plays well at home, really feeds off that home court advantage, going out west, going all the way to Colorado. They have an advantage usually when teams go play there. And that's something they are going to have to do without playing in Orlando. I think they're going to not necessarily suffer, but I don't think they're going to play as well. I still think they might make Houston, they might win 1 or 2 against Houston, but I like Houston's small ball. I like what they were doing before the break. Ultimately as well, Houston has more veterans. Denver's a very young team, or not necessarily the most experienced coach or the best coach. So I like Houston in this matchup. They got 2 MVPs on their team. I see them spreading the floor. Jokic, I see him playing, the best he can, but, threes are better than twos. I see the Rockets out shooting the Nuggets, spreading the floor, not taking Jokic out of the game, but, he will have to go guard a guy on the perimeter, not a guy known for his perimeter defense or necessarily his defense at all. Very intriguing matchup because 2 very different styles of play, 2 very different teams. But I like the veteran team in Houston. I like the 2 stars in Houston. So I like the Rockets winning in 5, maybe 6. If Jokic, I saw him, he's lost a lot of weight. He looks like he's in great shape. Maybe that'll be a factor, an X factor for them in the Nuggets, but I don't necessarily see it yet. I haven't seen it yet. So like I said, Rockets in 5, maybe 6. Clippers, Mavericks. I like this matchup a lot as well. The Mavericks being a very young team led by a young star in Luka Doncic. The only thing, like I just was talking about in the last segment, the Clippers just have so much firepower, so many weapons to use, and the Mavericks are a very young team. Their 2 best players are young all-stars in Porzingis and Doncic. Not a whole lot of depth after that. They have Seth Curry in shooting, and I know there are a lot of guys I'm disrespecting by not mentioning, but not the best overall team. I think Dallas has overproduced. They've done better than what everybody has expected them to do so far. I see Luka playing great, but they have multiple defenders to throw at Luka. The Clippers are a very good defensive team. Not so much for the Mavericks. Luka's not so much known as his defense. Neither is Porzingis. So defensively, the Clippers also have the advantage. I got the Clippers in 5, maybe 6. I see Luka winning at least one game. I don't really think he'll win 2, but I don't want to rule him out. But definitely Clippers in 5 or 6 games. The veteran, firepower will just be too much for that young team. I like Mavericks next year going forward. I'm really interested to see what they can do, with their roster. But as far as this season goes, not quite yet. But I love that guy, Luka Doncic, and I'm excited to see what he does going forward. All right, Bucks and Magic. Let's go out east. Bucks versus Magic. This will be a short series. I see the Bucks winning in 4 games, even though Orlando will be somewhat playing at home. I don't think that'll do too much to them. They don't have a person they can throw at Giannis. It's going to be a clear mismatch. Same thing we saw last year. They're going to win in about 4 games. Maybe Orlando can steal one since they're playing in Orlando, but still, they got no answer for Giannis. I have him going on a tear, especially in the first series. Bucks in 4. Miami and Indiana. So the Heat versus the Pacers. This is also a pretty intriguing matchup. The Heat, in my opinion, have the slight edge because star power. They got Jimmy Buckets, Bam Adebayo, the better coach, in my opinion. But let's break it down. Miami, like I said, has just the 2 best players in the series, in my opinion, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo. I'm not 100% sure on Oladipo. I know he came back before the season stopped. I know he said he was 100% healthy. But you don't come back at 100% and average 13, 14 points after averaging 25 points the following the season before, taking LeBron 7 games before he got hurt. I saw a different player in Victor Oladipo before he got hurt. I'm not ruling out he ever comes back 100%. I think he will. I love what he can do. What we saw him do against LeBron a couple of years ago in the playoffs was amazing. The fact that he took Cleveland 7 games and he was the driving force of that team, that was amazing. But I haven't seen that same effort from him. I like Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo more than him and Malcolm Brogdon. I'm unsure if Oladipo will be 100% healthy. I like the grit and grind of Miami. I got Miami in 5, maybe 6. Again, let's see how Oladipo comes out and plays. But 5 or 6, Miami beats Indiana. And next up would be the most, in my opinion, yes, the most interesting matchup in the first round, and that would be Boston against Philadelphia. I like both of these young teams. I think the Celtics have more firepower, have more offense, maybe even a little bit of a better defense because of their versatility. However, Embiid and Simmons, 2 very young, very talented players, kind of like a Magic, Kareem type tandem. I don't want to compare them in any way to them, but if you had to make a comparison, that's what you would compare them to. I couldn't say Shaq Kobe because Ben can't hit a jump shot outside 5-6 feet, but what they can do or their potential, their upside is through the roof. However, we haven't seen it. They actually tend to play better when the other player isn't playing. Which is concerning for your 2 best players on your team. Their chemistry isn't the best. We've seen them be in and out of the lineup the entire season. Ben Simmons, we knew he hurt his back right before the season broke out. It's always a question with Joel Embiid and his fitness. What shape is he going to be in? Is he in it for the long haul? He says he is, but it is his body. So I don't necessarily like Philly in the first round, especially this season. Boston, if you've paid any attention to basketball over the past couple of years or seasons, Boston has had Philly's card, their number, has handled them somewhat easily, and I see somewhat of the same. I got Boston winning in 6. I don't know, again, just because Embiid and Simmons, not the best tandem together. I like all the scores Boston has. So yeah, Boston in 6. Next up, pretty boring series, probably going to get the least amount of ratings out of all of them. Toronto and Brooklyn. I got the Raptors winning in 5. We got no KD, no Kyrie. What I was thinking from the get-go, I think it'd be stupid for either of them to come back and play. I shouldn't say stupid. That's a strong word. I I don't know if it's the smartest decision for them to come back and play, considering this season, if it has an asterisk, who knows if it's even worth it. Put all your eggs in next season's basket and make a big push for then. But I got the Champs winning against the Nets in 5. Pretty boring series, however. Let's move to those conference semifinals. So, Lakers versus Oklahoma City Thunder. Interesting matchup. However, I don't think they have an answer for LeBron. Not really an answer for Anthony Davis. They do have a Steven Adams down low, so a 7-footer who can maybe disrupt him a little bit. But they got no one to guard LeBron. I literally can't think of a person they can throw at him to possibly disrupt him. I got the Lakers winning in 5, maybe 6. Let's see what Chris Paul can do and those young guys. But for the most part, I'm very confident in saying the Lakers would win in 5 games. Clippers, Rockets. I think this will be a tough series. I think the Clippers do have more depth. Both teams are equipped for small ball. That's kind of the brand of the Houston Rockets, but the Clippers are right there with them, if not ahead of them in the small ball race as far as lineups and the players that are filling in those roles. So the Clippers are right there with them with the small ball play. Clippers have slightly more firepower. The Clippers have a better defense, a better coach. I see them mainly because of their defense taking advantage of that. I see Kawhi Leonard guarding James Harden. I see Paul George trying to guard Russell Westbrook. We got Patrick Beverley if he's healthy. So they have multiple defenders to throw at those guys. I like the Clippers in 6. I do think it goes 6 games. I think James Harden and Russell Westbrook are just going to be outmatched defensively, and Clippers will move on and face the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. But let's go out east. Bucks versus the Heat. The Heat have beaten the Bucks, I believe, in every matchup so far this season. At least they have the advantage in the matchups. Again, I think it's going to be a tough series. Giannis, however, is the best player in the series. I see that being a big factor. I do have faith in him. I think he's embarrassed what happened last year. I see him getting at least the Western Conference Finals, beating the Heat. Again, I think it goes six games. I don't think it'll go past 6. But again, the Heat, a very grindy team. They've given the Bucks, the Heat have given the Bucks a run for their money in the regular season. I think they'll do it again. However, Giannis is the best player in the series. I got to give it to him. I got the Bucks beating the Heat in 5, maybe 6 games. Next up would be Boston and Toronto. Pretty intriguing matchup. I think all the matchups in the semifinals are pretty intriguing. But Boston and Toronto, I got to give the edge to Boston here. They have more offense. Like I said, they have 3 scores. They're averaging 20-plus points a game. I think they have the better overall coach in Brad Stevens. I like Toronto a lot, but they're really going to be missing Kawhi, I think. And I got Boston in 6 games. All right, this is getting exciting now. We're going to the conference finals, specifically the Western Conference Finals, okay? And let's obviously go with the Lakers, Clippers. So, Clippers, you got to give them the nod as far as depth. We went through the top 5 guys. They have more scores. Obviously, 1 through 5, they have more players. Like I said, 4 players averaging 18-plus points per game. Clippers, however, have no paint, no enforcer down low to disrupt Anthony Davis, however, and I see that being a big factor. Anthony Davis is going to have to exploit that. He's going to have to attack that weakness any chance he gets, attack the paint, because that's what's going to be open for him. If he can do that, I like the Lakers a lot more. Again, that's going to be the X factor. LeBron's going to do what he does, no matter what they send at him. But Anthony Davis is going to be that X factor. Can he take advantage of them not having that elite down low force? And then on the other side, the Clippers have multiple bodies to throw at LeBron James. They have Kawhi, Paul George, Marcus Morris, Patrick Patterson, many guys they can throw at him. Even Patrick Beverley, obviously not someone you can stop, but he's a disruptor, kind of an annoying defender. So they have multiple guys they can throw at LeBron. again, he's going to do what he does no matter what, get his 10 assists, 25 points, 6 rebounds a game, but Anthony Davis is going to have to exploit that weakness in the Clippers, and I think he will, okay? Again, Anthony Davis and LeBron are going to need one more player to step up. Kuzma's 12 points a game isn't going to cut it when the Clippers have 4 guys in 15 plus points per game. I'm talking postseason. I don't think they'll all be 18, but I think all of them will be at least in the 15-point range. So the Lakers are going to need a third guy to step up, whether that be Kyle Kuzma, Dion Waiters, Danny Green, all 3 guys, I think, notable guys who can step up in big moments. At least Danny Green can. I have some faith in Dion Waiters. Kuzma's a young gun. Definitely some potential there. But I think it goes 7 games, and ultimately, I think Anthony Davis will attack that weakness down low, and I think the Lakers will have the edge over the Clippers. I have LeBron playing great, Anthony Davis being the X factor, and the Lakers winning in 7 games, and that basically being the finals of it all, the best series of the entire postseason. Again, I can't wait. I do think it can go either way. I'm just more of a fan of LeBron and the Lakers over the Clippers. Me personally. I don't think they should have a 50% odds to win the title, however. But I do like the edge they have over the Clippers. Let's go out east. Bucks, Celtics. Milwaukee has had the advantage every time they've played. However, we know what the Celtics have. Offensively, we know the firepower they've had. I've said it many times. But like I've said, Milwaukee has had the advantage every time they've played. I see the same thing. I like Giannis against the Celtics. I like him getting to his first finals. So that's what I see. I see Milwaukee winning in 6 games. Giannis finally getting over that hump and making it to the NBA Finals. All right, so the NBA Finals. Los Angeles Lakers, Milwaukee Bucks. I think it goes 6 games. However, the Lakers have 2 stars. Milwaukee obviously only has the one in Giannis. I think LeBron and Giannis are going to be the two heavyweight factors. I think LeBron will have the slight edge over him, having it be Giannis's first NBA Finals, especially in this new environment. I think LeBron, more than anybody, will be able to handle it. Again, better than anybody else will. So I like him having the edge over Giannis. The Bucks don't have an answer for Anthony Davis down low. Yeah, I like the Lakers in 6 games, maybe 5. Kind of depends on how much help Giannis does help. But as of right now, I'm confident in saying the Los Angeles Lakers will be the NBA champions in the 2020 or 2019-2020 season. As far as it having an asterisk or the quality of the season, what it means, that's a topic for a whole nother day. But I'm going to go ahead and take a quick break. When I get back, I'm going to talk about the Golden State Warriors and what I think their offseason should look like. And then here's a reminder, make sure you guys stick around to the very end of the show because I'll be breaking down and discussing my top 10 current NBA players. You guys don't want to miss that. But again, I will be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
What's up, guys? Welcome back. Like I said before the break, I want to talk about the Golden State Warriors. Now, we all know, what they represent, what they've established themselves to be over the past couple of years. An all-time great team, obviously went going 73-9, the best regular season team of all time, at least statistically wise, having two-time MVP Steph Curry, 3 championships in 5 years. We know what they've done. We know what they are. They're an all-time great team. I love to give you guys my opinion on where they are all-time in another video, possibly. But yes, we know what the Warriors are. We know what they represent. However, after losing Klay Thompson in the finals last year due to the ACL injury, then KD blows his Achilles and then leaves in free agency for Brooklyn. Steph then, 3 games into the regular season this year, breaks his hand and misses the majority of the entire season. You add all of that up, and what does it equal? It equals the Warriors go 15-50, okay, which equals the worst team, the worst record in the NBA. But now, they have arrested Klay Thompson. They have arrested Steph Curry and a somewhat rested Draymond Green. They have a lottery pick for this year. They have a young, I don't want to say a young star, but young talent, a very young prospect in Andrew Wiggins, who does have a large price tag that comes along with him, I know, but young talent. They have Minnesota's lottery pick from taking on Wiggins' contract, and then so the lottery pick from Minnesota will be next year's pick. And then they also have a $17 million trade exception from the trade sending Iguodala to the Grizzlies. So, there are worse places to be, in my opinion, after going 15-50. There are worse places to be after having 3 of your stars basically fully rested, having a top lottery pick for this and next year, and you just added some young new talent to your team. And you kind of hit the lottery with your draft pick last year in Eric Paschall, who no one saw necessarily being this good or popping this early. So the good news is the Warriors have options now. Okay, they're not stuck. I know you've heard people say they're stuck after the Andrew Wiggins trade or all that. They are not stuck, and I have a couple of different options that could potentially get them back into contention. Option number 1, okay. Option 1 would be you keep all the draft picks. You keep Andrew Wiggins, and you basically just do what you have been doing. If you're Bob Myers and the Golden State Warriors, you've basically, besides that 7-foot monster joining your team in free agency, in Kevin Durant a couple of years ago, they've been building through the draft. Every now and then they'll get a veteran in free agency, obviously, but they've been building through the draft. They drafted Steph, Klay, and Draymond Green, the 3 vital pieces to those championship runs. So yeah, you can keep the draft picks, keep Andrew Wiggins, and continue to do what basically got you here, with the exception of Kevin Durant, by building through the draft. And there are possible options with that draft pick, if you decide to use it on a player, on a prospect. I have a couple of prospects in mind. But let me start out by saying I am not in love with any of these prospects, nor do I think these prospects are the best fit for the Warriors and how they play in their system. But a lot of people's number 1 overall pick is Anthony Edwards, the shooting guard out of Georgia. He's 6'5", average about 20 points a game, 5 rebounds. But a couple of scary statistics to me, at least. Last year averaged only 29% from the 3-point line. That's a 3-point line that's moved in compared to the NBA. A lot of the times you don't see the top elite scorers in the NBA. We don't see them struggle shooting the 3 in college necessarily. We don't usually. Obviously, guys can put in work, and you never want to, put limits on somebody's game. You don't know how hard they're going to work. But on paper, not the best 3-point shooter, only averaging 29% from the field for a shooting guard. Only 40% from the field in general. So his overall field goal percentage was only 40%. Not a very efficient scorer. So those two stat lines right there are a couple of red flags. Not very efficient even in his college days. Makes me think about how he may be when he gets to the actual league. But Anthony Edwards, a lot of people have him going number one or top three. There's not really an overall an easy number one pick like there was last year in Zion, but definitely a top prospect this year. Another guy would be James Wiseman, center out of Memphis. He's 7'1". Obviously, we didn't see him play more than 3 games at Memphis last year due to an issue he was having with his eligibility with the NCAA regarding some things in his personal life, which I'm not going to dive into. But yeah, we only saw him play 3 games at Memphis, but in those 3 games, 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 blocks. So an efficient big guy, not necessarily a guy the Warriors would want for their system. When you're looking at stats and things he's good at and stuff like that, not necessarily someone you can throw into that system, someone who could translate right away. Not a 3-point shooter, basically a force presence, a guy who can grab a lot of rebounds. That's not necessarily a bad thing to have when you have Steph and Clay shooting a whole lot of 3-pointers. Isn't necessarily a bad idea to have someone big down there to grab a whole lot of rebounds. That's kind of why we saw Bogut thrive. We saw that's not the only reason Bogut had a great eye for seeing plays develop. I miss Andrew Bogut, everything he brought to that first championship team. But that's why we saw JaVale McGee thrive in that system. A big guy who just grabbed a whole lot of rebounds, put the ball back in afterwards a whole lot of time, or kicked it right back out to him for another 3-pointer. So plugging a 7-footer into that system to grab some rebounds and to get some second chance points might not be a terrible option, but isn't necessarily the best choice for that top lottery pick. For a top lottery pick for your system, not necessarily the best choice for the Warriors. Also, like I said, he only played 3 games at Memphis, so there isn't too much film. You can just go sit there and watch a whole bunch of his highlights, a whole bunch of his game, maybe his high school game. But as far as high level NCAA play, only a couple of games you can watch. Kind of a red flag for myself. So for me personally, not the best choice for them to use in that pick. Next up, the most popular choice in the draft. He's going to put butts in seats, but he's also going to bring some controversy to your team. Your team might be in the news a lot, in the media a lot, but, LaMelo Ball, a 6'6", 6'7" point guard, averaging about 16, 17 points, 7 assists, 7 rebounds. Him and Lonzo, I think, are very similar players. Maybe he has a slight more of an upside, possibly in the offensive end. Defensively, I like Lonzo a lot more. He's more built. Defensively, I really like his transitions, the way he also can guard multiple positions. Can really put some pressure on the opposing team's ball handler. We've seen it especially this year. We saw it a lot last year. He didn't play a lot his last year in LA, but defensively, I could make a point. Lonzo was the anchor of the defense for the Lakers, and that's ultimately why their defense struggled so bad. It was because LeBron pretty much took the year off, but it was also because Lonzo is a great defender and was off the court a whole lot of the time, and that obviously translated in the defensive win shares and all that stuff. I don't know why I'm talking about Lonzo right now, but LaMelo, very similar player to Lonzo. I think could have a better offensive game. But like I said, he brings a whole lot with him. His family, his dad especially, his brother who still isn't in the league, who needs a roster spot. The dad always says he just wants, the 3 brothers to play together and they can only play one way, their way. And if they're not playing right, it's the coach's fault, So yes, good player, a tremendous amount of upside. However, a lot of stuff that comes with it, a lot of baggage, you could say. And, the Warriors don't need another point guard, another ball handler, a guy like LaMelo who always kind of seems to have the ball in his hand. LaMelo definitely wouldn't be a good fit at all in the Golden State system. I don't see them using the pick on him whatsoever. I see him more in a New York, maybe Phoenix. We'll see. But no, I don't see the Warriors selecting him with the pick. At least I don't think they should. And yeah, I like LaMelo a lot. I think he is the best player in this draft, arguably. But yeah, not the guy the Warriors need to select, in my opinion. And then there are guys like Obi Toppin, Killian Hayes, just decent players who you could plug in, could be role players on your team. They could have a tremendous amount of upside. I haven't seen a whole lot of basketball played from them. I don't want to act like I have, but obviously, the one guy I would lean more towards would be Killian Hayes, a 6'5" point guard. Even though, like I just said with LaMelo, they don't need, but what LaMelo brings, he's pressure to start. He brings a lot of pressure. Killian, an overseas player, he might already, like we saw Luka come in and translate right away to the NBA. Not a big name like LaMelo. So if you were to select somebody, a guy like Killian Hayes would be a guy I would be okay with, I'd be in favor of. But besides that, there aren't really a whole lot of great choices for a top pick. And that's why option 2, in my opinion, would be the better of the two choices. And let's break down option 2. Okay, so option 2, you trade this year and next year's pick. You trade Andrew Wiggins because you got to get rid of that big contract that goes along with it. Also, you may need to move Draymond in that contract. That's less likely than the Wiggins contract, but may be something you got to do considering on the caliber of player you're trading for. And then they have a $17 million trade exception that they would also have to use. But yeah, you trade all the picks, you trade Wiggins, and I'm going to break down 3 guys who I think are based on their level of realistic, or how realistic they are, or that move is. I'm going to rank them that way. So number 1 is going to be most realistic. The most realistic guy, I would say, would probably be a guy like Aaron Gordon. Okay, like a 15, 16 point guy score, get just 6 rebounds, 4 or 5 assists, 30 percentage, 3-point shooter. So he can spread the floor, a versatile defender, can guard multiple positions, can play the 3 or the 4, so Draymond can slide down to the 5. So definitely a good pickup for the Warriors. I think an upgrade over Wiggins. Has a smaller contract as well. I like Aaron Gordon a lot. A little bit of a settle. If you're talking about, possible options, a little bit of a settle on the lower side. Doesn't really get me too excited, but definitely a realistic option. Definitely an improvement to the team. But again, not the most exciting pick, however. But again, 15, 16 points a game, 6 rebounds, can spread the floor, a versatile defender, can make big splash plays, in the air. A good player, kind of wasting his time somewhat in Orlando, unless, they put more pieces around him because he is a complimentary player. So I think he would do well in the Golden State system. Let's move on to pretty realistic. So could happen, not going to bank on it, but I would believe it, and I would be very excited for the Warriors if it did happen. A guy like Bradley Beal, okay? 30 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, a 35% 3-point shooter. We know what he can do. Also, kind of like Aaron Gordon, but even more, kind of wasting his time in Washington, in my opinion. His co-star in John Wall has missed the last 2 to 3 years. I don't see him coming back to the full level, the full level he was at before the injuries he has suffered. So I think it's best if Washington simply moves on from him. They're probably going to have to swallow the John Wall contract. But yeah, definitely a guy who would thrive in Golden State system, a great catch and shoot player, a guy who can play with the ball, off the ball. He is a shooting guard, 6'6", 6'5" shooting guard, but again, you can slide Klay down to the 3. You have 3 elite guards. I see it working. I see it putting butts in seats and getting me very excited. I would love to see Bradley Beal out of Washington on more of a contending team. So that's my pretty realistic option. And then let's go to my unrealistic yet, super cool third option, and that would be Giannis Antetokounmpo, okay? And you might be saying I'm crazy. However, hear me out. Let's see how this postseason goes for Giannis, okay? Let's see if certain players on his team get exposed again. Maybe he sees himself that he does in fact need some more help, but with that salary cap looking like what it is and Milwaukee not necessarily being able to make those moves or assign players, at least not having great assets to move for other players, he's kind of stuck in Milwaukee. And I don't see, like I've said before, Chris Middleton as a second best player on a championship contending team. And it's only a matter of time, or maybe this postseason is the time he realizes it himself. But that's ultimately what's going to happen. Giannis is going to have to say, I can't win here. I need out. Similar to an Anthony Davis situation, Warriors are. I think he's going to have to say, I want to go to the Warriors. I'm not, because the next year he's only going to be on a 1-year deal. It'll be similar to a Kawhi going to the Raptors situation. He can say, I'll be here for a year, but then after that I'm gone. That's why we saw Anthony Davis go to LA, because, LA had a good package as well as that team he wanted to go to. So it could be the same situation with Giannis. However, in that situation, you have to use the trade exception. You got to move Wiggins. Both picks are going to have to go to Milwaukee. You're going to have to most likely trade Draymond's contract as well. So multiple different moves have to be made. A lot of movement on the roster. But I do think it would be well worth it. I think everybody would agree with me there that it's well worth it for if this could happen, if Golden State could take this chance, pull the trigger, trade for Giannis, put him alongside the two best shooters ever. I see a similar to KD going to the Warriors in a juggernaut, all-time, favorite situation. And, I think that would be great to see. Not so much great for the NBA. I think we might get a similar reaction as we would to Kevin Durant going to the Warriors. But he would be my most unrealistic yet, the biggest splash, biggest move. The money move, the biggest thing. So, I'm excited to see what they do. No matter what, I think the Warriors will be back in contention next year, despite what everybody's saying. I think both paths are doable. Again, I think both paths can lead them lead them back into contention. I do have faith in Bob Myers and the Golden State front office. I think they're one of the best front offices, top 3, no matter what, in the entire league. I'm excited to see what they do with all the options that they have. Because like I just said, they have options now. Despite being the worst team in the league, it's kind of working out in their favor. And they have been given an opportunity to put all their eggs in the next couple years basket. And I hope that's what they decide to do, with Steph and Clay being in their primes, obviously. But yeah, that's going to be it for this topic. When I come back, I want to talk about the top 10 current NBA players, in my opinion. I'm going to break them down. Don't go anywhere. I will be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Alrighty, guys, welcome back to my fourth and final topic of the day. I'm going to be discussing, like I've said, my top 10 current NBA players. I've been looking forward to this. I'm excited to give you guys my list and a little insight on my basketball views and my opinions. You guys can feel free to let me know if you agree, disagree with any of my takes. I encourage that, actually. But let's start with number 10. Number 10. This was tough. I was debating between a couple of different players at number 10, but I ultimately had to end up going with Russell Westbrook. Okay? Dude's a walking triple-double, is Mr. Triple-Double. I think he's taken that name from Oscar Robinson, who prior to him was the only player to average a triple-double throughout an entire season. He's done it twice, almost did it for a third time. We've seen him move to a completely different system, still do well, still an all-star, maybe struggle a little bit at first, but again, we've seen him do very well this season, especially with Houston opening up the paint, trading Clint Capella, letting Russell Westbrook drive to the lane, basically as much as he wants to. He's played very well this season. He's impressed me. He did better than what I actually thought he was going to do in the Rockets system. The player I was debating with Russell Westbrook was Joel Embiid. When he's healthy, I think he's the second or best, center in the NBA. The biggest knock on him, though, is his shape, and is he going to be on the court? Is he going to be playing? And that's a big knock. You have to be there and ready to play. And you can say anything you want about Russell Westbrook. He's going to be there, though, for your team on a nightly basis. He's going to give you everything he has. The other knock on him is because he gives you everything he does every single night, which is a pro. The con that comes with that is in the playoffs or at the end of the season, we can sometimes see him break down, shoot, not too good from the field. His percentages come down, numbers go down. So that's my only knock on Westbrook, and that's honestly why he's not, lower on the list. Because he tends to somewhat break down at the end of seasons, not be as effective. And again, that's because he gives you all he can every single night, which takes a tremendous amount of work. It makes me, give him a tremendous amount of respect. Not a whole lot of players do that in today's NBA. Him and his co-star James Harden are kind of the only ones who really do. So tremendous amount of respect for that. He's the walking triple-double, and I gotta make him the 10th best player in the NBA. Okay, number 9, Damian Lillard. I know. I got him at number 9. I have him over Russell Westbrook. That's crazy. Is it though? At this point, all time, sure, Westbrook all time is a better all time talent. But at this point in time, I would have to take Damian Lillard over him. I saw them go head to head in the playoffs last year. I saw the Portland Trailblazers beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, who in my opinion was the better team. When you have Paul George and Russell Westbrook and a pretty good supporting cast, I think they should have been the favorites. They were the favorites over the Trailblazers. However, we saw the Blazers win in 5 games. So I think that made me edge more on Dame's side in that discussion. Again, him going head to head, beating him, despite having the inferior team somewhat at least. That really, bumped him up on my list at least. He's a first team All-NBA point guard. Can average, this year he's averaging close to 27 points a game. Has led the Trailblazers to multiple playoff appearances, has won multiple playoff series. He's very clutch in the fourth quarter. There's not a whole lot of bad things you can say about Damian Lillard. And I love what he does for Portland, for the Trailblazers. He really puts them on the map. He's the reason we pay attention to them. I got him as the number 9, the 9th best player in the NBA. Okay. At number 8, I gotta go Luka Doncic. I know, it's crazy. He's already, in my opinion, the 8th best player in the entire NBA. We've seen what he can do. Okay, he's 21 years old. He has brought to the Mavericks, which last year, was a rebuilding basketball team. I know they added pieces like Kristaps Porzingis, but it's mainly because of the performance of Luka Doncic. Him being in the MVP race this year has propelled them to being 7th in the Eastern Conference, which is only 4 games behind the Clippers, which are 5th or 4th in the Western Conference. Western Conference. So the fact that Luka has been able to do that in his second year, he's averaging close to a 30-point triple-double, again, in his second year. had brought the Mavericks into playoff contention. I think they're definitely a playoff team, playoff basketball team. I don't necessarily think they can win a first-round playoff series. If you miss my playoff predictions, I recommend going back and listening to those. But yeah, Luka, top 10 player in the league. I see him only going lower, getting better as years go forward. I see him going forward in the MVP race. And yeah, I love what I've seen from him. Love what I see going forward. I have him at the 8th best player in the league right now. All right, number 7. This is a really tough one. This is a really tough one. And it really kind of depends if defense, how important defense is to you. Defense is a pretty important part. When I look at a player, I look at all parts. That's why Luka isn't lower on the list. He isn't a very good defensive player at all. And that's honestly why I got James Harden at number 7. Okay. We know what he can do on the offensive end, can average 35 points a game, 10 assists, 7 rebounds. We know what he can do. But people have attacked him defensively, and then similar to Russell Westbrook, the knock on him, despite him showing up every single night in the regular season, giving his all mainly every single night, we see him in the postseason somewhat break down, be less effective, and we see his percentages drop. That's my biggest knock on James Harden. We've seen him go up 3-2 on the Golden State Warriors and not been able to take advantage of it. 2 times now. So not once, but we saw him play the Golden State Warriors also this past season without Kevin Durant. Clear opportunity for him to show he's the guy. He's the guy. He had an opportunity. But we saw him, ultimately freeze, shrink up, and be a small shell of himself. And that is the biggest knock on James Harden, and that's why I can't have him any lower on my list. He's an all-time scorer. For him to even be in the conversation with Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Wilt Chamberlain, guys who are in the record books for scoring the basketball. He's up in there with them in those records. Only player to have like a 50-point triple-double. So we know what he can do. I just need to see a little bit more from him. I know we've seen him take the the Rockets to the playoffs since he's made it to Houston. He's put them into playoff contention. But it's an overall player type thing, and what he doesn't do on the defensive end and what I've seen him not do in the postseason does matter. And I do have him at number 7, but like I said, don't want to take anything away. All-time scorer, the best scorer right now in the league. Well, Kevin Durant's hurt at least. The step back 3, he made that a shot. He made it not a travel anymore, similar to what Steph did just to a 3-point shot, or Kobe's spinner and turnaround jumper. That's James Harden's step back. Kareem skyhook, James Harden's step back. So he created a move in the NBA similar to those guys. He should be remembered as an all-time scorer. But yeah, he's in my opinion, he's the 7th best player in the NBA. I wouldn't take him over these guys I got going the following. So let's move to number 6. Number 6, I have Anthony Davis. Okay. Averaging 26 points, close to 10 rebounds, a block a game. In my opinion, he's the defensive player of the year this year. He's done nothing but impress me in the spotlight he's been playing in all season in LA. A huge step up to where he was in New Orleans. The biggest knock on him was, is he a number 1? Is he a number 1 guy on the team? Can he be the best player on a championship roster? I haven't necessarily ruled that out. I don't want to say no, because I think he can be the best player. He might even be the best player in the playoffs this year for the Lakers. He honestly will have to be if they want to have big success. But, he only has 1 playoff series win in his career. It's strictly because of what he can do on both sides of the basketball. I have him where I have him. He can score 26, 27 points. He's been in the MVP conversation before. It's not necessarily his fault. He's run into the Warriors, in the playoffs all the time. Same thing with James Harden. He's had to run into the Warriors all this time. I don't want to necessarily take that against them, or make that an argument against them. But yeah, he can bring it, do it all on both sides of the court. He's the best power forward in the league, offensively and defensively. Can guard multiple positions. Been very impressed with him what he's done this year. Him and LeBron, number 1 seed in the Western Conference. Anthony Davis, in my opinion, the 6th best player in the NBA. Number 5. I got to go with the best shooter of all time, a 2-time MVP, 1 unanimous, 3-time champion, no finals MVPs, was snubbed of 1, but at number 5, I got Steph Curry. Okay, we know what he did to the game of basketball as far as the 3-point shot. He revolutionized the game. He was, he's the driving force, the driving factor in Golden State, them being in contention these so many years. Obviously, I know them adding Kevin Durant, the 7-foot monster, was huge for them. But in my opinion, number 1 factor, is Steph Curry. He's the face of the franchise. He was arguably almost the face of the league during his 2-year MVP run until LeBron kind of, we saw him, come back 3-1. Obviously, that kind of put an end to that. But, we saw what he did for the game of basketball. 2-time MVP, 1 unanimous. Only thing he's missing is that finals MVP. In my opinion, he's the best point guard in the league right now. There's not another point guard. Unless you're saying LeBron is a point guard, obviously I would take LeBron over him. But like straight up point guard, there's not another guy I would take over him. In my opinion, he's top 3 all time right now as far as point guards go. I could make an argument for number 2. That's, again, another day. An argument for another day. But yeah, we know what he did for the game of basketball. Best shooter of all time. Best shooting player in the NBA right now. I got to put him at number 5. And, we need him back on the court. We need him. The NBA, the ratings, the NBA is better when Steph is playing, and I can't wait to see him back on the court. We got to see him for, 2-3 games, maybe 2 games before the hiatus happened. But, yeah, I can't wait to see that guy ball again. Number 4, okay? This is when it gets a little controversial, in my opinion, and where people might start having a different list. Number 4, I got to go with Giannis Antetokounmpo. Okay, I can't put him over the next 3 guys I'm going to talk about, and it's because of what we saw him do in the postseason last year. We saw him go 2-0 against Toronto, and then they figured him out, plain and simple. Built a wall around the hoop. He wasn't able to play his game. It clearly affected him psychologically and physically. Didn't get to his spots. His numbers went down. Effectiveness went down. He did not play up to that MVP caliber we saw him playing the entire season. Okay, and yes, he can do it all on both sides of the court. Okay, he is possibly the MVP this season. In no doubt, him and LeBron are the 2 front runners for MVP. I can't wait to discuss that going forward as well. Maybe next week I can talk about that. But yes, contender for MVP. He is an MVP. But until he can prove to me he can beat the other guys on this list head to head, I can't put him ahead of them. I know freak talent. Like I said, he's a 30-point, 13 rebound a night guy, which is insane. All-time talent already. But needs to develop an outside jump shot. We saw him struggle again when Toronto built that wall around the paint. We saw him not be able to hit a consistent outside jumper. That's another factor that has me thinking or less of his game. At least, on the top 10 players list, that's got to affect it. And that's honestly the biggest reason. The other guys I'm talking about can hit the outside jumper. There isn't necessarily something you can take away from their game, and then they're just going to all out be terrible and struggle. Giannis, you can take out the interior, and he's not the same player. As far as these other guys go, there isn't necessarily a place you can take away, and they're not the same player. So until Giannis proves otherwise, I have him at number 4. But again, top 5 in the NBA, top 2 in MVP rate in the MVP race. Goodness, MVP race. All-time talent. Can't wait to see what he does going forward. I have him at number 4 today in today's NBA. At number 3, the reigning Finals MVP, the Claw, Kawhi Leonard. Okay, We saw him do it in Toronto. What team he goes to basically becomes a contender. He proved it last year with a team in the Raptors, which up until that point, a team none of us took seriously. We thought of them as the baby dinosaurs. LeBron swept them easily or took care of them easily every time they had a matchup, every time they played, especially in the postseason. So for Kawhi to go to that team and take them to a championship definitely improved his rep, for me, where he ranks for me on my list. Until then, I saw him take Giannis out. He was the better player in that series. That's also why I give him the edge over Giannis right now. Averaging 27 points, 7 rebounds, about 4 assists. What he does defensively, almost 2 steals a game, 2 Defensive Player of the Years awards. Only thing he's missing is that MVP award, which necessarily isn't a thing that's hurting his all-time legacy. That is the only thing he really is missing. However, if he can go win a title with a third team and get a third Finals MVP with a third team, something no one else has ever done before, man, I definitely think he can move up on my list if he does that. But until then, I have him at number 3. Number 2, I got to go with the 7-foot alien, insane, whatever you want to call him, in Kevin Durant. He can shoot the 3-ball, the mid-range, inside. He's a 3-level scorer, best scorer in the NBA right now, as part of, all 3 levels. He can do them all 3 at a very high clip, can handle the ball. Only thing, knocking on him, some people don't like his personality, don't like, he's a little skinny, maybe he kind of gets bumped around a lot, and maybe defensively isn't that good defensively, but when he went to Golden State, I think he shut up a whole lot of the haters, a whole lot of people saying he wasn't that top guy, and until we saw him go out in the playoffs last year, a lot of people, I don't want to say including myself, but I was almost there. I was almost calling him the best player in the entire league, okay? What he was doing years, back to back to back, if he could have sustained his health into that finals against Toronto and they win, there's an argument I'm putting him at number 1 right now. However, head-to-head matchup, people say, he's an all-time better scorer than LeBron, all that. LeBron still averages, more points per game, more all time. I know Kevin has his scoring titles. Yes, Kevin has more of those, but the reason I can't have him number 1, it's the eye test, it's the head-to-head matchup. I know Kevin got the best of them in the head-to-head matchups whenever he was in Golden State, but obviously he was going to. He had the superior team every time they matched up. LeBron still got a couple of wins in there, but still, LeBron has the edge head-to-head. The eye test, I got to give it to LeBron. I'm already talking about him, so let's move on to number 1, LeBron James. He's still the best player in the NBA. It's his 17th season. He moved positions from small forward to point guard. He is now the best point guard in the league this season, averaging 10, almost 11 assists, 25 points per game. In a season, he said he's going to try to dial it back, scoring. Still averaging 7 rebounds when he has Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, and Anthony Davis on his team. Is the 3rd all-time leading scorer. Number 1 in the Western Conference, that was a big thing for him. Could he come to the West and translate? A lot of people were saying, no, he's not going to be able to cakewalk through the West. He did in the East or Eastern Conference. He came, obviously last year, we saw him get hurt, have a very disappointing season. This year, we saw him bounce back better than ever. Really proved to us that he is back. He's still the king. Again, this is just in my opinion. He's the assist leader, number 1 seed in the best conference in basketball. I don't see how you can't put him at number 1 as the best player in the league. I understand Giannis, but I watched them play right before the season took a break. I saw LeBron go play Giannis and go play Kawhi in their houses, and I saw him outplay both of them. Not easily, but he was, when you're watching that game, he's easily the choice of, best player on the court. He's still your choice if you watch those games. So I don't know how he can't be your number 1 choice. I shouldn't say that, actually. I know how he could be. Kevin Durant, 7-foot monster. We know what Kawhi has done. We know what Giannis is. But what LeBron is doing. In my opinion, there's no one doing it better than him right now. I can't wait to have him back in the postseason. I can't wait to see, playoff LeBron, because the last time, I don't know if people are remembering, last time we saw playoff LeBron was that run, in 2018, 2019, when he drug those or 2017, 2018, when he drugged that Cavaliers team to the finals, played one of the best games I've ever seen in the finals, dropping 50 points. I know they lost because of the whole J.R. Smith incident that game, but you can't blame LeBron for that. I'm excited to see what he can do, if he can turn it back on, despite, sitting out for such a long time. But yeah, that's my top 10. I would love to hear feedback from you guys on my top 10. Love to hear feedback from you guys in general about my first show, because like you guys know, this was my first episode, my first podcast with GSMC, so I would love to hear some feedback. Let me know what you guys think. This is going to be the end of the show, but if you guys have a social media, I would like to encourage you to go to Facebook, go to Twitter, follow us, and if you can, leave a nice review, because that would really help us and really help me. But thank you so much for listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. That's going to be it for next week. I'll see you guys next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.